Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online video with me, Sherman. Today we are taking a look at the Knights Templar build. And I know it sounds funny, Knights Templar, you know, but it was a build that I actually came up with a long time ago, but I never got around to actually making it or putting it out because I didn't think it would be a viable option at the time. I've had time to test this build in a lot of different ways, and honestly, I don't think I could have come up with a better Templar build for the Templar class itself when it comes to tanking, because there's a lot of different ways that you can tank in this game, but one in particular really stands out, and that is, and I hate to say it, that's the Dragon Knight. And I truly do have to say this, and I'm going to say this with the kindest of intentions, but it's going to come out in a bad way. So I think the Dragon Knight tank personally is the most useless tank in the game. That's just my opinion. The reason I say it's the most useless tank is because it's a one-trick pony. Every Dragon Knight build is the same thing. We never see any differences in Dragon Knight tank builds because you're always using the same abilities. You never use anything different. And I think that's why a lot of the reasons why a lot of people play the Dragon Knight is because it is such an easy way to play the tanking role that you can literally one trick it and win. You know, it's like the easy win button. You know, click, I win. And I love to try new things, anyways. But I never thought bringing this one out would be, like I said, a viable option, especially with this race. The Khajiit race has always been the weakest race in the game because it has no racial benefits outside of higher crit value. You know, it does have 20% more health recovery. It does have the 10% more stamina recovery. But that's really it, and then it's stealth. You know, the race itself doesn't play well into anything other than DPS. And I think it's time that we see what other races can do outside of their norm. Now, the reason why I said that about the DK, now you gotta understand, I play DK. I have two of them. I play a DK fire tank, and I play a DK, or DK flame tank, and I play a DK poison tank. And both of those work really well. It's just like I said, it's just really easy to play them. But when you play the other classes as tanks, it can be a little bit more complicated because they don't have the same utility or the same passive respect as the DK. So you have to play them a little differently. So please understand, I do not hate the DK. I just find it too easy to be played as a tank. And it becomes boring for me. It's not that I hate them, I just don't like playing it as a tank because it's too easy. So, the Knights Templar build is a tank build built around group support. In the most easiest way to explain it, it is literally built around group support. In that, we do get a lot of group support from the Templar class anyways. So I kind of built on that, and I built on the fact that they make really good tanks outside of that. So I took the two, you know, supportive side and the tank side and kind of just meshed it together to come up with this really interesting concept of a build. This is a self-reliant build. That means it does not rely on a lot of help from others. It does not rely on a lot of healing from you know, a healer and stuff, because it has so much healing it does itself. But it does need that the heals from the healer, to make it a viable option. So let's go ahead and take a look at the stats. And as you can see, I have 16 in health, 48 in the stamina. And the reason I did that is because of the way the build's set up. I have a 30k health, 28k stamina, and my resistances might look kind of low, but they're not when they're fully buffed up. I do have a 616 stamina recovery with a 616 magic recovery, 432 health recovery, which isn't great, but because of the systems and the way this plays, it's going to work out in the end. I need to go ahead and pop my food again. I am using tri-stat food from the test server, so I don't have the maximum amount of attribute values that I could have if I was running like Longfin, or I was running one of those other tri-stat foods from that I could craft. So going back in here, I do have a 39% crit, and it's only because of the way I set the build up, and then I have a 2k weapon damage. Now this plays into the build a lot. This right here plays in the build a lot. These play into the build because of, you know, this one ability. And then if you look, my resistance is 30k and 29, but I'm also using Blazing Shield. I know a lot of people say that Blazing Shield got nerfed. It didn't get nerfed. It actually got changed to fit in a better situation. It's very situational. It's one that if you're playing a tank, you're going to keep it up as much as you do Obsidian Shield because of its purpose. It not only does it do a good defensive mechanism, it also has good AoE also. So let's go ahead and take a look at the gear now. And on the gear, now the gear is going to stand out a little bit differently than what you might see. If you guys are wondering what the shield motif is I'm using, it is the new motif for the new shield in Clockwork City, for the new motif. It is the servitor or whatever, I don't know. It's whatever these people are that protect the city. It's their motif. Alright, so looking at the gear here, we are running a 2-piece Sentinel Rikagums, whatever. The reason I chose this set wasn't for the 2%, just the 2% healing done, but also when you heal a friendly target, you have a 10% chance to summon a Dwemer Spider that gives health and stamina back to your group in a 5-meter area. So as long as people see this spider, they see the coverage of its range, and they stay in it, they're going to get stamina and they're going to get health. So this is one of your first heals that you're going to have besides some of the other ones. Moving on, the next set we are using is Hunning's Rage. Now, I know a lot of people are like, why are you using Hunning's Rage? The reason I chose Hunning's Rage is because it has two things of crit, it has max stamina, and it has weapon damage. That plays essential in this build big time. And we'll get to that in a second. The next set, though, is really going to throw people off because it is the Knights Errant set. This is a set a lot of people think is a PvP set. They don't see it much of a PvE set, and it works really well as both. So with the max health, the max stamina, and the weapon damage, and the extra weapon damage for your sword and shield abilities, it plays really well into this build. Because of the fact that you get that extra 126 weapon damage, and you get that 195 on the weapon skills, can really play a lot into this build. We are running on the jewelry 2 weapon damage, and then on this one we are running a shield play, reduced cost of block and bashing. So we want this here for a reason, and that reason is you need that greater block cost management, and you need that greater bashing reduced cost, because you do bash a lot with this build. Alright, moving on to the weapons here. We are running dual sword and shield on both bars. One is a decisive weapon, one is an infused. As you can see, one has crusher, one has hardening. Both shields are Nirnhoned for a purpose. On the gear up here, we are running 3 infused on the chest, helm, and legs, and with tri-stats. On the shoulders, gloves, and boots and belt, we're running Nirnhoned here, with Nirnhoned here, and then reinforced and reinforced. The helm is medium, so we do get the 5-1-1 setup for the Undaunted. Because being a Khajiit, you need that 6% extra boost. In fact, it's dire for the Khajiit. Now, the reason I chose the Khajiit race is because of the weapon critical. If I wasn't a Khajiit race, this would be at 32%, and you really need that 39%. If you can get more out of the build and use stamina pots to give you greater crit and greater weapon damage to boost those two things, it would be a better option for this build. So when it comes to pots, I would suggest using those. I don't know if I have them out yet, but we'll go ahead and grab them out of the consumables here. Just so you guys can see which ones I'm talking about. But it's these ones. They give you the stamina immediately. They give you major endurance, which increases your stamina recovery by 20%. They give you major brutality and major savagery. So it increases your weapon damage and your weapon critical. These are really great pots for this build. Let me go ahead and put them on here, just so I can show you guys what I'm talking about. So when you use this pot, the reason why it's so good is, as you can see, your stamina recovery goes up a little bit, but your weapon damage and your critical go up. And that's what you really need for this build. You need that higher weapon damage and you need that higher critical for this build to work optimal. So now that we've seen the gear, and like I said, on the gear itself, you want these two pieces Nernhoned, these two pieces reinforced. The reason you want that, it's going to give you the highest resistance values you can get. For the Mundus Stone, we are running the Tower, which gives us increased stamina or increased max stamina. It's again the best option for this build because you are a Khajiit. You gain greater stamina recovery, and you get more out of stamina with this build because you're going to be using block a lot to a degree. Not all the time, but you are going to be blocking a lot with this build because you are going to be blocking the heaviest hits coming at you. Moving to the skills here. On the main bar, we are running Pierce Armor. This is going to be the bread and butter of this build, kind of, when it comes to the fact that it's your taunt. It does your Major Breach, Major Fracture, which reduces the enemy's physical and spell resistance by 5,280. That's essential to this build. Of course, it's a tank. You have to have that skill. So, the next skill on the bar is Resolving Vigor. As you can see right now, it heals for 10,000 health, and in another 8,000 on top of that. But when we do this, and I want to make sure I have my potion going, and we go in and we look at that skill, now we're healing for 12,000 health to ourselves and 9,000 to our allies. Almost 10,000 health to our allies. That's a way more powerful, effective heal than what we could possibly use. Next up, we have Blazing Shield. Like I said, very, very essential to this build because you need that survivability, and this damage shield's going to do that because the more enemies that are around you, the stronger the shield becomes. So when you're in trials, this shield becomes massive, especially with if you're fighting a lot of ads. Trash fights, this is essential. Boss fights, it's essential because even in a boss fight, you're still getting a 37% shield, which is still pretty large in comparison to some of the other damage shields in the game. Alright, moving on, we have Restoring Focus. This is hands down one of the best buffs you can get in the game for tanking. Even though it doesn't move with you, you can move out of it for 8 seconds and move back into it. So you can keep it up pretty good. And if you have to move, like shift your position when you're tanking, let's say this is the boss, this tree. We set it down, we're tanking the boss sets down an AoE, we move over, we replace it. And as you can see, it's really easy to do that. So you can just move it over and you still retain it for 8 seconds. So you can sit here and just go around the boss in a circle and place it down. A lot of people act like that's a really problematic thing. It's not when you become so accustomed to it. Alright, the last ability on our bar here, besides our ultimate, is Power of the Light. Now, I chose Power of the Light because it's a really good support damage thing. It applies Minor Fracture, so it increases the spell, it grants Minor Fracture, Minor Breach, so it increases the amount of physical and spell penetration you apply to the enemies by another 1320, along with the 5,000 you already have. So it's kind of a double stack maneuver for this, so you're going to double stack this to get that higher penetration on them, increasing the amount of damage you do to them. On top of that, any damage that this thing that you do to them, it like consumes or it stacks the damage and then blasts it to the enemy when it finally hits. So it can do up to 16,905, but if you have the potion going, just so you can see this, you can beef up that damage by oh wow, it doesn't do that. Thought it did. I thought it worked off the potions. It does not, so my bad there. But still, 16,905 damage is really good. The fact that you can make this crit is even better, because then that max damage copy can crit. So it's a really good benefit there. It also, the spike damage it does in the beginning can crit as well. Alright, so you want to hit them with taunt first before you apply this. Next up, you have Reviving Barrier. Now this is going to be, you're going to use this more than Warhorn with this build, especially in dungeons, because in dungeons it's going to be more about group survivability. In trials it's going to be a mix of both, group survivability with, you know, group buffs. So you're going to probably use this in a mix of both areas. Like trash fights, you'll use this in trials, mainly to keep the damage mitigation down for your allies. Also, especially with all the new trials having a lot of AoE damage, a lot of greater damage applied to you, this is going to play essential in those new trials because of that. Alright, moving on to the back bar. On the back bar, we are running Deep Slash, not Heroic Slash, Deep Slash, because we are running a decisive sword here. We are going to be on the back bar a lot of the time. So on the back bar, we are running Deep Slash. This applies minor maim to the enemies, and it can apply it to 3 targets instead of just 1. So when it comes to trash, you're going to be able to apply this to multiple targets. Instead of running around trying to apply it to a bunch of them, you can apply it to hit 3, move over to another group, hit 3 more. You know, you can kind of like allocate where you want the minor maim. On top of that, it also reduces their movement speed by 60%. So really, really effective thing. Now the next ability is going to be for some group support. This is Luminous Shards. It's not going to do a lot of damage because you don't have a high magic damage, but it's for what it does. It's the benefit of the synergy on it, because you can use this to synergize with your allies. You can throw it out, they can synergize off it, they can get Magicka and Stamina, or Stamina and Magicka. So it gives both. So it's kind of a nice trade-off there. Next up, we have Absorb Magic. Now that's why I said you're going to be on the back bar most of the time, is because you're going to be blocking on this bar. What this does is it gives you a damage shield. Now if you look at that damage shield, it's 584. When you do this, drink your potion, have your potion up, it's still 584. But here's the thing that you have to know. When you use this damage shield, and you have down your buff from the other bar, this, and the reason I'm showing you guys that thing with the weapon damage, because I want you guys to know that it's not affected by weapon damage. So over here, when you do this now, if you look at the healing that it does, it actually heals for 17% up from 16% because you have your Circle of Protection down. This is also why you want to have this build up, this ability up as much as possible, is for the health return from any projectiles, spell projectiles you absorb from this damage shield. Also on top of that, it reduces your block cost and increases your block amount. So it's a very powerful skill to have slotted on this bar, because like I said, you're going to be on this bar a lot. Next up is going to be a group support for trash fights. Anytime trash goes down, you're going to pop Repentance. The reason why is to give yourself, you and your group health, but it's also going to help you maintain your stamina really well. It also grants you minor intellect, minor endurance, and minor health. So if you look here, we get a little bit greater stamina recovery and magic recovery. And if we have our pot going, and we go back in here and look, at our recovery rates, we actually go up just a little bit more. So it's kind of a, you know, just a little bit of that extra return of resources. Now, this next one is a range taunt. I chose the Magicka version, Inner Rage. I usually don't choose the Magicka one over the Stamina one. The nice thing about this, though, is that it does grant a 38% chance that to allies that use the synergy to deal extra magic damage, and then every 2 seconds, over 2 seconds, and then causing them to explode for extra magic damage to all enemies. This is a great synergy because it does do that extra damage. So that's one of the reasons why I'm using it. Next up is, of course, Aggressive Warhorn. This is bread and butter on most tank builds because of the fact that tanks generate a lot of ultimate, because they're doing a lot of should be doing a lot of light and heavy attacks to keep their resources maintained while blocking. So this build does have a good amount of block cost reduction with a good amount of survivability with the, you know, the barriers, the heals, and all that kind of stuff. And this is also the other reason why we have a Reviving Barrier, is because when we do put this down, this thing, the heal is greater, even though the damage shield isn't. But with the damage shield, we can boof up a little bit, and we'll go ahead and put this down again. Because the damage shield is based on max stamina and weapon damage. So it does build up on that. So 32,000 damage shield with a 25k heal over 30 seconds is really powerful, especially, like I said, in dungeons for trash and in trials for trash. This is a really effective skill to use. Warhorn's good, but mainly for bosses, and it's mainly in certain phases of bosses when you want to kill the, like, get the boss's health down fast. You want to use Warhorn more effectively. So aggressive Warhorn, really powerful ability. It also gives major force to your group, increasing their critical damage done by 15% for 9.5 seconds. So, and it boosts everyone's stats by 10%. So let's go ahead and take a look at the champion points, and then we'll go ahead and show the build a little bit in play so you guys can see for yourselves. So starting with the red tree, we have 23 in Ironclad. This reduces damage taken by direct damage by 10%. Now, if you guys are wondering why I don't have more points in here, I do have that circle that I put down, and when I put that circle down, it gives me 8% damage reduction. So I get 8% from that. I don't really need more from this. So I might not get 10% out of it, or 12, you know, like 20% out of it, but I get 18, and that's going to be more than enough. Next up, I have 20 into Spell Shield. This gives me extra spell resistance. Now, for being a Templar, I already get spell resistance, so I didn't want a whole lot more into it. So I figured 1900, and it seems 1900 is a good fit. We also get Invigorating Bash, which is really nice, because when you bash, you have a 20% chance to heal for so much health. Now, if you guys didn't know that, the Knights Errant set also heals you anytime you use a Sword and Shield ability. So every time you cast a Sword and Shield ability, doesn't matter what it is, you're going to heal for a small amount. Moving on, we have 23 into Thick Skin, 43 into Hardy, 43 in Elemental Defender. These both give 10%. This gives 10%. That's still, you still get 18% here with the 10% and 10%, so it stacks up. Moving over here, we have 23 into Bastion. This increases the effectiveness of your damage shields by 10%. So, like I showed you guys, or I've explained before, with this, you want that 10% there for your damage shields to be more effective, especially when it comes to your Blazing Shield. Now, if I could put 56 into this, I would, and my Blazing Shield would actually be 36%, which would be 40% with one enemy, and then with multiple enemies I could beef it up. Moving on, we have 16 Expert Defender. This gives us 10% damage reduction from light and heavy attacks, which stacks with this Ironclad and then stacks with this. So we actually get a 28% or 38% increase in our damage reduction from any light or heavy attacks. So it's really kind of a, like, we need that. Next up, we have 39 in Heavy Armor Focus. This gives us 3,315 physical resistance. If I didn't have this, I would actually be below 20k in my physical resistance. So I kind of put more points into this than I did into Spell Shield, because I need that extra physical resistance. Moving on to the green tree, we have 23 into Warlord. This gives us a reduced cost to break free by 10%. We put 2 points into Sprinter just to give us a little bit extra sprint, this extra sprint reduced cost. We are wearing one piece of medium, and we do have the medium passive for sprinting, so we actually have like a 5% sprint cost reduction. So we have 16 into Bashing Focus, which reduces the cost of our bash by 10%. So with that extra thing that we have, our bash cost is really cheap. Moving on to this, we have 23 into Mooncalf, 23 into Arcanus. As you can see, these both have 6%. Now, the reason why I chose this is because I'm wearing one light, one medium. Those give me 4% Magicka and Stamina Recovery each for wearing one light and one medium. So this will give me a 10% Magic Recovery, 10% Stamina Recovery. And on that one bar, I get the extra 10%, so I'm actually getting 20%. Moving on, we have 43 in Synecdoche. This increases the amount of magic and stamina return on our fully charged heavy attacks. So we get this plus our heavy armor skill, which I'm going to go ahead and go over this too because they changed it. We have Revitalize, which increases our Magicka and Stamina return on our heavy attacks. Magicka if we're using a Magicka weapon, Stamina if we're using a Stamina weapon, we get 25% more. When you add that extra 10%, that's 35%. When you add it to the other 30%, we have a 65% return of our resources. Really powerful for this. Going back into the champion points, we're going to go over to the final tree of the shadow. We have 21 into Pafal. This increases our effectiveness of healing reduction. So if we need to equip Reverberating Bash on one of our bars, we can. That'll give us 20% more effect on it, especially on certain bosses. Just certain bosses is what we need this for. So that's why that's there. We have 23 into Tumbling. This reduces our dodge roll cost by 10%. And then, of course, 56 into Shadow Ward, reducing our block cost by 20%. This is essential right here. You have to have that 56 points here. So just make sure you have 56 points here. You can do really what you want with these points in the green tree to better benefit you, but this setup here works the best so far. Alright, moving on to the blue tree. 43 into Blast. And that's to make any of our heals, because most of our heals that we're using are going to be based on the stamina side. So most of our heals are going to be coming from there. So we don't need to put anything into Elfborn. But we do want to get that 10% more increased healing. Now, whenever I put down that Circle of Protection thing that I have from my class, which gives me Major Ward, Major Resolve, it gives me Minor Protection and Minor Vitality, I think it is. It gives me 8% healing received, and 8% damage reduction, and 5,280 extra resistances, both spell and physical. It also gives me 8% healing done. Gives me Minor Mending. That stacks with this, so I have an 18% minor or healing done, with the 2% extra from the helmet makes it 20% increase in healing done. So it's kind of a nice trade-off. It gives me a good balance in my character for healing, tanking, and support, so it's really kind of nice. Moving on to the middle tree, we have 35 in the weapon, physical weapon expert. Now, the reason I do this, especially for tanks, is tanks do most of their damage through light and heavy attacks because they don't use abilities to do damage. They use light and heavy attacks. And the more damage you can get from your light and heavy attacks, the better off you are as a tank. So I put 35 into here, 56 into Master at Arms, increasing my direct damage done by 20%. And that light and heavy attacks are direct damage, so that together is 40%. I also put 23 into Shattering Blows. This increases the damage done to enemies with damage shields by 10%. Now, there's only literally like a handful or more bosses in the game that have damage shields that they use. Like if Arx Cranium, the final boss, Ceratrix, she uses a damage shield. This allows you to remove that damage shield a little bit faster. And because of that, we also get a couple cool passives here. We get Retaliation. When you block a heavy attack, your next light attack used within 7 seconds deals 30% more damage, which stacks with both of these, which makes it 70%. And then we get Reposit, which is increased by weapon damage and max stamina. It does not grow based on max magicka or spell damage, so you will have a smaller amount with that. But if I do this, and I drink my potion, and we go back in there and take a look, I just want you guys to see this, because it does go up. So I have a 15% chance to redirect damage back to my enemy, and it's 5,324 physical damage. So I can actually get this to crit as well. So it's kind of nice. Then we have Butcher, which increases the damage done with light and heavy attacks to by 5% when enemies are below 25% health. Remember, I do 40, that's 45, and then if we go over here and we take a look at this, we have 43 in a Mighty. This increases our physical, poison, and disease damage by another 10%. So that's 45, that's 55% more damage we do when the enemy is below 25% health. Otherwise, we do 50% more damage. Now remember that 30% we get when we knock an enemy off balance? Or not knock them off balance, but we block their heavy attack? Our next light attack does 30% more. That's 80% more damage that we can do. I know it seems crazy. Why does the tank want to do damage? I'm just showing you the aspects of this build so people know that it can work in not only in Dungeons and Trials, but it also works in solo play. Moving on, we have 23 into Precise Strikes. This is to increase our critical healing, but also to help with damage if we need to. So we can also critical heal and do critical damage. 10% more added on to the 10% we get for having a Ardor Spare ability equipped on both bar makes it a 20% more increase in critical damage that we do. So that's 70% more damage we do in crits. And not only that, but our heals hit for 70% more. So really powerful setup here. We put 7 into piercing just to give us a little bit more in physical penetration. If you look at that 713 and you add it to the 13 something that we get from the one thing, the 52 something we get from pierce armor, we actually get almost a 7, we get over 7 or 8,000 armor penetration with this, or physical pen. So it does help with our damage also. And that is it for the champion points. I'm going to go ahead and just show you guys how this build works. So basically what you want to do is you want to start on this bar, and the first thing I always do is pop Vigor, drop my Blazing Shield, drop this, taunt, go in, switch bars, and this is how I pretty much keep my build going, is by doing that. Like I said, anytime an enemy drops, I'm Repentance. And the reason why is I need to keep my resources up. So I need to keep my stamina up, not only for blocking, but also for casting abilities. So that's pretty much the easiest way to sum up how the build works. I would show you guys on a boss, but it takes a long time for this thing to kill a boss, especially the bosses around here. And I just kind of wanted to get the build out so you guys could see for yourselves how it works. It is a very effective build, especially when you apply Warhorn. When you apply Warhorn to this build, the stats go up: 32,000 max health, 30,000 stamina, 18k magicka, and then on top of that you get the 15% more critical damage on top of that, which applies to not only the damage you do, but it also applies to that critical damage also applies to critical healing. So you not only get 20% more critical healing, you get another 15% on top of it, making it a 85% critical healing done for your Vigor. So you want to kind of get those heals off when you use Warhorn. Pop that Vigor right afterwards. And that is the Knights Templar build, guys. The Khajiit works the best for this because of the higher crit rate. If you weren't playing a Khajiit, you would have to remove a couple abilities off your bar, which would be the range taunt, and over here you would have to remove Power of the Light. But you could still play it as another race. And you'd have to put on here the Fighters Guild. Evil Hunter. You'd have to put in place of those two things. And I know it sucks, but at the same time, if you're not playing a Templar or a Khajiit, you do need this. Because you need that higher crit chance. Now, I did this. I chose like I said, I chose the Khajiit because it has the better crit values. And when you're playing a stamina build and you have the ability to do increase your weapon critical, to increase those critical heals, the more effective that this hits for, the more effective this hits for, the more effective this is for you because of that healing. And the crit chance of it, the more effective it is for you overall. On top of that, it also applies to any time you use a light or heavy attack, or you use a weapon damage ability, or a one-handed sword and shield ability, you also get healing. So you're constantly healing with this build, and that's kind of why this build works the way it does. And you have to use these stamina pots, the essence pots, to give you that crit and that weapon damage, is because of that. You need those things in this build to work that way. Now, this build was designed with Wrath in mind as well, but since Wrath was removed with this last PTS, I had to use something else to kind of make up the difference, and that's where these spell power pots, or these power pots come in, these stamina pots come in, is they play really well in that. On top of that, you're getting the extra, recovery, and you're getting 6,618 stamina, or 7,000, I think, on the live servers. So you're getting a lot of stamina back. You have good resource management with this build already, but you're going to get even better with this. And you got to remember, you have to heavy attack also with this build to keep your stamina pool coming in. The main reason why we use this monster set is so we summon the Dwemer Spider. We want that out as much as possible as well. So we do a lot of extra healing. Now, this build literally can play through dungeons in normal and some dungeons in vet with a group without a healer, because you do all the healing. You have that much healing in the group. It's that insane. I have not tested it on the live servers yet, but I have done some testing on PTS, and everything that I'm telling you, it does work. And it's a pretty powerful build. It's not the best build out there, but it is a really good build for the Templar. I just find that this setup like really works, especially with all the healing that you're doing. It draws a lot of attention to you. With all the damage that your character can do, can draw a lot of attention to you. So you don't have to taunt everything. You only have to taunt specifics, because the outgoing damage you have is really good. Now, if you need to taunt something, like I said, at ranged, you do have the ranged taunt on the back bar here, so you can taunt. And that's why I said the Khajiit works the best for this, is because of all the benefits it gives you. Now, I do want to kind of go over the passives. You want to make sure you fill out the Adric Spear tree completely. You want Piercing Spear. You want the Spear Wall, especially Spear Wall. This reduces the amount of, or increases the amount of blocking you get against melee attacks by 15%. So it gives you a lot of blocking, which is really good. On top of that, you get Burning Light. And this is a great passive. Any Adric Spear ability you cast has a 25% chance to deal an additional 3,768 physical damage. So that even applies to this and this. So these will do more damage. So really good there. I think the magic one though will do the 2,000, but that's still fine. I mean, anything that can help improve your group's DPS or damage is going to be good. Luminous Shards is a definite on this build because of the fact that it works the best for it. And that's why you have the higher magic, by the way. Moving on, Balanced Wear is very important also, because this gives you your spell resistance and your weapon damage. Moving on to Dawn's Wraith, just fill them all out. And mainly you want Illuminat. This one grants you Minor Sorcery whenever you cast a ability from the Dawn's Wraith ability. So when you cast this, it grants your group Minor Sorcery, which increases your spell damage by 5%. You also get Restoring Spirit, which reduces your Magicka stamina and ultimate cost by 4%, and you get Prism, which generates 3 ultimate every 6 seconds anytime you cast one of these abilities. So you want to keep this applied as much as possible, so you can get that Prism effect. Next up is Enduring Rays. Not really that big of a deal. Every one of these passives needs to be maxed out. And the reason why is you want this Mending. This increases the healing effect of your Restoring Light ability. So your Repentance has can be increased by 12% depending on the severity of some of these wounds. So this can heal a lot more. You want Sacred Ground for minor mending, and then you want Light Weaver for the Restoring Aura. They increase the duration of Restoring Aura by 20%. And that, I believe, is this right here. It's either this or this is Restoring Aura, one of the two. So you already have it, so you want that there. And then, of course, Master Ritualist, which increases your resurrection speed by 20%, and resurrected allies always return with 100% more health, and it gives a 50% chance to fill a soldier. But it's mainly those two top passives. When it comes to your weapons, you just need your Sword and Board passives all maxed out. You want to unlock the top 3 abilities and Reverberating Bash. The reason you want this is for those fights, like fight in Direfrost Keep where you're fighting the witch who has the healing. You can put this on her and it reduces her healing. It's one of the longest versions of Major Defile in the game. It lasts 10 seconds. Make sure you fill out all the passives here. On your armor, light, fill out the top 3. Medium, fill out the top 2, and the bottom 1. You want this bottom 1 because of the extra dodge roll cost reduction of 4%. So you remember I have 10%, I have 14%. On top of that, it also gives you the reduced sprint cost. So you have a 4% sprint cost reduction too. Heavy armor, all the passives. I do not like this change here, but hey, I can't say anything. This gives you minor mending. Or it gives you, it's not minor mending, it gives you rapid mending, it gives you increased healing received by 8%. That's why it's nice, because when you put this circle down, you get 8% healing received, because it gives you minor vitality, and this gives you 8% healing received. So you get a 16% healing received with this, and it's really nice combination. Moving on, in the world, I just fill out the 2 soul magic ones. In guild, you want to get the fighters guild. Pretty much just fill it out, because you're gonna use even if you're not using evil hunter, you do want this one maxed. You do need this first one, and bounty hunter's nice for if you're doing Cyrodiil stuff. Skill tracker's okay. It just increases the damage of your fighter's guild abilities against Daedra and stuff. You're not using any, but still, I like to have it all maxed out. Mage's guild, just the top one. Undaunted, make sure you fill out both the passives here, because you want these passives. And then on Alliance War, Assault, make sure you have Vigor and Aggressive Warhorn. You don't need any of the passives here, because they don't really do anything for you outside of Cyrodiil. Here, make sure you have this one unlocked. This gives you 10% magic recovery whenever you have one of these slotted, and Barrier you have slotted. So that's why we have Barrier here, is it still gives us 10% magic recovery. When we switch bars, we get 10% from this. So make sure you fill out all racial passives, and then on your crafting, you need the alchemy one for medicinal use, and on provisioning, make sure you fill out gourmand and connoisseur. And that's pretty much it for the build. I mean, it's not complicated to run. It's a really fun build to run, and it works in pretty much all content. If you're looking for leaderboard stuff and you're trying to get the best run you can in trials, this build won't work the greatest for that, but it does work in pretty much all trials. The newer trials, it's going to work better as an off-tank support, but it still works really good in them, or will work really good in them. Now, if I was going to play this build in a new trial, I probably wouldn't choose the Khajiit race, and if I did choose the Khajiit race, I would make some adjustments, like maybe just saying, changing the Tower Mundustone with the Lord Mundustone so I get the greater health. But other than that, I really wouldn't change much around. And that is it for this build. And like you said, it works out really good. So it's up to you if you want to play it or not, and I'm going to leave that to you guys. But really fun build. Knights Templar. Check it out for yourselves if you don't believe it works. It does work, and it works out really well. But yeah, really fun build. So if you guys like this build, hit that like button. If you guys want to see more builds by me, you guys can check my channel. I try to post builds every so often. I have a bunch of new builds coming out this week for the new Clockwork City update, and then next week I'm going to have a couple builds coming out from my normal builds that I'm making adjustments to for this update, just because I want to make some adjustments to them to make their viability and play a little bit better, and then of course I have later builds coming out down the road. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this, like I said, if you want to see more, subscribe. Other than that, yeah. So other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy will see you all later. Bye.